Hello everybody and welcome to the session today. It's the Creator Online and we are exploring media cards for digital arts production. So this is really kind of a series of some really specific topics we want to cover to really deals with some of our equipment offerings and how things what you can do and with different media cards, understanding a little bit about read-write speeds and all this kind of stuff. So a lot of really interesting information we'll be providing, and I think it will provide some good insight into informed decisions, as many people might want to go out and purchase their own media cards and have their own cards to use for digital arts production. So that's what we're going to get into today. So really, thanks for joining us. Just want to thank all our partners in this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, then we have our library partners. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, we have the Collingwood Public Library, we have the Wasaga Beach Public Library. And the cool thing is, and that's what we'll talk about today, is that you can access this digital arts equipment through our library partners. So we have the Canon 6D photo camera that's available at all three library partners. So all that you need to have is a valid library card, and then you complete a proficiency test. And we're going to go through that today as well. And the video camera, the digital cinema camera, is available at the Wasaga Beach Public Library and the Blue Mountains Public Library, and that's what we'll look at today as well. So a lot of great topics to discuss, and getting a good understanding of what is available and how it can work. So that's the really cool thing. So okay, so let's look at what does all of this mean? What are we going to talk about? So we're going to look at equipment through the Creator project. Like I just gave a little bit of a background on that. What's available, how you can access it. And then we'll look at media cards for photography, and then we'll look at media cards for video and digital cinema, and what exactly does that mean? Because there's a lot of information out there, and we want to make sure that you understand what our project has, what our libraries can offer you, and what that will mean for you as artists in terms of using equipment, using cards, dealing with media on cards, all that kind of fun stuff. So let's start up with the information on the equipment. So I just want to give this proficiency test, go over that a little bit, because it's a real simple process. So you go to our website, tbmcs.ca, and you take the online photography camera or cinema camera proficiency test, and then you can access the camera loans at your specific library. So the equipment consists of a Canon 6D DSLR photo camera with a 24 to 105 millimeter zoom lens. So that's what's available there. And then there's also a Blackmagic Design Pocket Cinema Camera 4K with manual fixed cine lenses. So that's available there as well. So that's equipment that you can access, and equipment that's there, and all that you need. Again, you complete this proficiency test. We have some great videos that go over all of the equipment. You watch those, it helps to inform you, and you can get through understanding how the cameras work, answer questions, finish the proficiency test. Then we know that you've gone through those videos, and that's really the main thing for you to watch those videos, understand the intros and all the specifics of the cameras, how they work. And then by doing the proficiency test, then we want to get access to this equipment. So what equipment can you get in which library? So again, the Canon 6D DSLR, that's available at all three library partners. So we have that at the Collingwood Public Library, the Blue Mountains Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. And the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera, that's something that's available at the two libraries of Blue Mountains Public Library and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. It's a nice kit in a case, comes with the camera body. So essentially, this is what the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera looks like. Camera body comes with lenses, and then that's what can be different prime fixed lenses that you can attach to it. And the Canon 6D, like I was saying, the DSLR, that comes with the zoom lens. So really great kits to get you going and started in the digital arts of digital photography and digital video, digital cinema. So that's what is available through there. Okay, so that's the two pieces of equipment. Now let's get right into media cards for photography. What does this mean? How does it work? What are we talking about? So essentially, there's a few main elements of digital photography, and what we're really it's a little bit different than digital video, and that's what we want to look at today. The comparisons, what's the similarities and the differences between these two mediums, because photography, you're taking one picture for a specific amount of time, the shutter speed, and that's it. You need to write that to a card. There's a bit of time, and then some cameras can do rapid multi photos per second. So you'll see things, bursts of 5-6 shots per second, and that's what it's doing. And these are generally quite high resolution photos. So it's a full 35 millimeter sensor. So it's high megapixel, high file size. This one frame can be 20-30 megabytes in size, one frame. So that's, I think, really important, is that the photography, we're dealing with single frames going to a media card and then writing. So the potential, yes, it needs a large file to be written onto the card, but we're writing just usually one photo at a time. And with video, we have to do multiple frames or images, such as, essentially think of the frames as photos. You could be doing 30, 23.98, 30, 60 frames per second that have to be written onto a card. So usually what's required are faster media cards that can drive digital cinema cameras. And this becomes a more and more of an issue in terms of read-write speed when you get into higher resolutions. So formats like 4K, now there's 8K, 6K, 12K. So these higher resolutions that are starting to emulate what one photo image does, has to be written 23, 24 times a second, 60 times per second, and then maybe even high speed, 120 frames per second. So it's a lot for the media cards to do. And that becomes more and more of an issue. But these media cards are getting super fast. Essentially, every few months there's some new versions, new speed ratings that can cover more and more speed capabilities, which is really fascinating and interesting in how that can work. So that's the really fun thing. So those are those differences. So let's get right back to the media cards for photography. What does that mean? So the flash media cards, these are the types of cards that are in there. So they're not hard drives. So this is essentially a flash media card, lets you write things into its state. So think of it kind of like a piece of clay, and you're putting a fingerprint on it. You can write right into it. Versus hard drives, things are spinning and rotating through, and then it needs to write and spin fast enough to write fast enough. So it doesn't put it into this kind of mass of storage. It puts it into the spinning storage, so that can be potentially slower. And that's why the neat thing about flash media cards is the speed that they allow, and that's why we've been able to accomplish a lot with digital photography, digital video. So in general, you want fast reading and writing speeds, and these will be written on the sides of the cards, and you'll see different cards. They'll have they'll note how many megabits per second. So it's really, really tiny here, but I'm just going to read what it says. So it's 95 megabits per second. So this is an SD card Extreme Pro version, and it's an SD-XC. And we get into these other things. So originally there's SD cards. They were capped at a certain size of storage space. Then we got into SD-XC that could cover more storage size and storage space. And then there's different versions. So what the UHC, so this is like a 3 class 10. And that gives you some more information on how fast it can work. And basically the main thing there, what it still comes back to, is 95 megabits per second is how much the writing speed it can do, is to write onto the card. It can put 95 megabits per second. So that means whatever video is being shot on it can only be 95 megabits total size per second. So those amount of frames, for example, in video, have to equal that. Now in photography, 95 megabits per second sounds pretty adequate, because if you're only having a 20-30 megabyte photo image, then and you have up to, like, let's say, a second exposure, you wouldn't really be necessarily doing more than that. You have plenty of writing speed available in a 95 megabits per second. Then we start to get into some of the compact flash cards, and I don't have the photography compact flash card, but what I'll pull out is the CFAST 2.0 card that comes with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. So these are the compact flash compared to an SD card. A small SD card than the compact flash is a lot bigger. Usually you can have more storage space, but what's really important is it becomes like this little mini hard drive. And this one, for example, so this SD card had 95 megabits per second. This one has 520 megabits per second. So it's very fast. And compact flash cards also have usually, you know, a couple hundred megabits per second. So that was the decision to start using these compact flash cards, is because they have higher writing speeds. So you can get into higher resolutions and rapid photos. So if you want to do 6, 7 photos per second, so you're holding down the shutter and you're going click, 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 click. You hear that sometimes, especially like in events, photography, people are trying to get a bunch of photographers getting a bunch of photos in succession to pull out the best second out of that, because people are moving and in an event, and you don't really know what exactly you'll get. If you're just taking one picture, you know, at a time, it takes time. Then you're like, oh, I'm not sure if this photo is good. So, but if you take rapid succession photos, those bursts, that's always fascinating to do. But you need this faster card because there's so much data per second. So that's the idea there. So again, we have these 3 cards: the SD card, compact flash, CFAST 2.0. Those are our main cards that you'll see involved in using photography. So the media cards for photography. Okay, so let's move on into media cards for video and digital cinema. So flash media cards that allow for fast writing and reading speeds are used for digital video. And especially, this becomes really key here now, because now there are a number of frames captured per second, as I was discussing. So, you know, 23.98 frames per second. So you're no longer capturing just one frame, you're capturing 23.98. And, you know, and that's the really, the neat thing, is 23.98, you know, making that work. So, you know, that's really the cool part. So reading and writing speeds need to be very fast in order to get us to, you know, in order to get us to the 23.98 frames per second. You can imagine if there's, let's say, 60 frames per second, anything like that, it becomes a, you know, real burden on the cards to be able to do that. So older SD cards would be, you know, traditionally a lot slower than even 95. You might have things that are 35. I'm going to look at what this one is here. I have a couple here on me. This one's okay. So then we get into the Extreme Pro. There's a newer version here, and this one's 170 megabits per second. So you start to get into that. Now, the other thing with cards, it will tell you how much storage space is on there. So that's really key. So if it says, you know, 128 gigabytes, right? So that's how much storage space you have, and how exactly is that working, right? So that's a really important thing of how much storage space you get on the card. So 128 gigs. Then the compact flash cards, they get more expensive. Again, they can read and write faster, but then we're dealing with the file sizes aren't necessarily that much bigger. 128 gigs as well, right? So this one could be, I think this is a couple hundred of dollars, and these ones could be as little as $50 for the same SD card, right? So it depends what you're looking to do. Now, so here's a listing of the ones here. So SD cards for digital cinema, digital video. We're looking at SD cards. We're looking at SD cards, the CFAST 2.0, the big card, and then solid state drives, the SSDs. And that's a really neat category because you can use directly solid state drives. So one of the earlier Blackmagic cinema cameras, when the first versions came out, they were built on using just solid state drives like these internal ones that are basically for laptops. the small solid state drives. And this goes into the side of the camera, and you're writing directly onto that. So it's a pretty low cost solution, very fast read-write because it's a solid state drive. So again, there's nothing spinning in it. It's very similar to the flash memory where you're just writing right into this memory space. And this one you're writing right onto the solid state drives. No spinning parts, generally very fast. So this was going right into the camera. So it had like a little hard drive enclosure essentially where you're putting the camera. But what these pocket cinema cameras can do, which is really something of interest, is you can hook up a solid state drive with a USB-C or Thunderbolt 3 cable, and there's a side cable area here where it says USB on the side of the camera. So it just says like USB on the side of the camera, and you can plug in a solid state drive right to the side here. And it'll read it, you can format it specifically, and then you can gain a tremendous amount of space. So now all of a sudden you can spend $100 getting a 500 gig solid state drive that can read and write very fast speeds, and you can achieve the different modes, so 4K and going like that. So the thing is with solid state drives, it's really important, all of this media is really important to test. You don't want to just go and use it and try and shoot higher frame rates in video, or if you're doing photography, you want to test it out for what you're doing and so on. We've looked and we've really tried to set up the cameras with the fastest possible cards that are available. The Canon 6D comes with a fast SD XC card that's I believe 170 megabits per second, so more than enough card space to work with. And then the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera kits, what we've done is put an SD card, and I recommend for the Blackmagic camera kits to just use the SD card for HD resolutions, and then go to the Compact Flash 2.0 card for anything higher than HD or higher frame rates, because this card can read almost 4 times more data, 520 megabits per second. So these are 4K optimized. So that's what you want to use. Alternatively, you can also attach your own SD card, solid state drive, and use it as a USB-C, attach it and make it work that way. So that can be a really useful scenario, is to attach your external solid state drive onto the camera. Now the one thing is we don't have anything, but there's some mounts that you can get specifically that can hold the hard drive and so on. I recommend maybe some sort of Velcro, bungee type cords or elastic bands to put it on the side of, let's say, the tripod or something like that to store it. Now that could also be something, really make sure that you do have that solid state drive attached somewhere properly, because you want to make sure that it doesn't get loose or the cables get loose, because if it can't read or write, you can have a failure in the capture of your footage. So that's really important to make sure that it can read write properly and work in that manner. So that's, again, really important stuff there. So those are the 3 options with your digital cinema or digital video, is SD card, CFAST 2.0, and then the solid state drives. Now something that's interesting is there's some newer cards, and they are available. And I just want to see if I have one around here so I can specifically demonstrate what they are. And we're just going to give it a look here. And I think I have one over here. So there's higher speed solid state cards, sorry, the SD cards. I'm getting ahead of myself here with solid state. The SD cards, and they are a new version. And this new version, and what I'll do is I'll pull this camera out here. So the cool thing is with the new, so this is a Blackmagic camera. This is a solid state drive. And you can see I've put it on a rig, and I've put it like a bungee cord here. So that way the USB-C cable can go to the side of the camera. So it's very useful to have it attached to something like that. So always make sure you have your external solid state drive attached to something. So here, these are the new ones. So these are the SDXC, and these are V60 and V62. So these read and write at 250 megabits per second. So they're kind of usually a little bit of a different color, but 250 megabits per second versus about 100 something megabits per second. So double the speed. These ones, these little guys here, they can actually read and write in 4K. The big difference on the back is that it has these 2 rows of metal sensors versus the previous versions just have a single row. And that's how you can differentiate it. So don't be alarmed. You'll see, like, if you get one of these, there's a couple rows of it. Now these again cost a little bit more. So these will be about $150 or so for 128 gigs. So about maybe three times more the cost of these regular the version before. So these are the V30 version 1, and these are the V60 version 2s. So those are the SD XC cards. And then the nice thing is you can get even more space available. So you can go to a higher amount of data on those, such as going to 256, and I think there's even more. There's like 500, but 256 gigs tends to be kind of the most affordable SD. And then the CFAST 2.0, they go in those all these kinds of shapes and sizes as well. But again, your best bet for a lot of space would be this external solid state drive and attaching it through USB-C, and that works that way. Again, for photography, these you can get you might not even need 120 gigs. You can get even smaller. But again, these aren't too much. I think they're under $50 now, the current pricing of the SD XC cards. And I always recommend, they have like usually the Pro versions tend to have the best read-write speeds, and they're a little bit more robust. So if you can sometimes spend just a little bit more, go to the Pro version, and I highly recommend going that route because it will be a little bit more efficiencies, a little bit higher read and write. And now you've been hearing me say read-write. So writing is when you're capturing the photo or the video, it's writing to the drive, and that's really the most important thing. Sometimes there's different speeds, so you want to make sure that the write speed is that high. The read speed isn't as important because you're usually taking these and offloading it then to a computer to work with. So you're putting it onto another hard drive, and that then becomes more important. What's the other hard drive's reading speed? So the reading speed is more just to be able to play things back. So sometimes you can as long as the recording is there, but it tends to be parallel. The reading speed won't be necessarily faster or slower. It will tend to be, if anything, faster, but not slower. So the reading speed is for you to be able to play things back. So you can replay videos that you shot. You can go to the play button on the Canon camera and look at the photo that you took. So those are those options as well that you can do with the equipment. So it's just a lot of things to think about. And then one of the other elements too is, and we have some videos that you can already access through our website. Go to our YouTube channel, so tbmcs.ca. Go to our YouTube channel. There's some workshops on the cameras themselves. But what you need to do too is think about the formatting of these cards. So generally, these cards will work in exFAT. And if you joined us last week, we had a whole session on that, the optimization of media, of hard drives, and making them work for both Mac and Windows. So the exFAT format works universally on both the Windows systems and Mac OS systems, but they also work in most cards and most card readers on the cameras. So an exFAT is a pretty universal format of these media cards as well for both photo and video cameras. So that's a really great thing to remember as well, that the exFAT format. The Blackmagic Cinema camera also lets you go directly to a Mac formatted hard drive. So if you already want to do it that way, you're using a Mac, then you can format it that way, and it's not a problem. It will read either or. It'll be a Mac or exFAT. And then the Canon camera, I think, will generally just work. It just works in the exFAT, and then you can always just format directly in the camera, and that will work. And however you format it, any computer will be able to read it, to at least read it, and you don't necessarily need to write to it. But that's the good thing. You can always load it on a Windows or Mac computer, and you can read it, offload it, copy it over, and work from there. So that's the great thing. These things, and all of the media, because it's flash, solid state, there's no spinning parts. So it's very robust, very error-free. It's not prone to have problems. It can still happen, but they're very robust and very, they can work under different temperature conditions. Unlike regular drives, they might be spinning. They could have issues at higher temperatures, but all of these can work at extreme temperatures, I would say. I've worked in some extreme cold temperatures, some extreme, not necessarily as extreme hot, but humidity. And regular hard drives would not like humidity, but these kind of flash systems can still work and manage to get through because they're not working in that process of getting the having to spin up and work with all these kind of external parts. So that's all the media stuff. So it's, again, something to consider. Make sure you have enough write speed. You need at least over 250 megabits per second to do 4K video. So always remember that. And generally, for photography, if you have that about 95 megabits per second, or I think you can even be down to about 65 as well, somewhere around there, it gives you enough read-write capabilities there. So think about that. Solid-state drives can be a great option. So if you want to invest in something that you can use both for the digital cinema camera and maybe also for, you can use it for a computer as well, that could be really nice because then you can get both uses out of it. This solid-state drive is not just can be used for the camera, but I can then edit directly with it and then use it that way. So that was something that was mentioned last time, is that when using the Blackmagic Cinema camera, you can think of these as potential negative. You can buy these; they're not too expensive. About $100 range for half a terabyte, 500 gigs or so, and then use those as like raw, and keep everything stored that way because it has a longer storage archival life than spinning disks. So the solid state could really be used that way. So that could be a nice tool. You get 6 of these, and then you just record everything, and it can work that way. I've heard some people now working that way too with photography. Is why not just take photos? Yes, you can work on it off a hard drive, but keep all these SD cards. If they're only $40, $50, you have 100 photos on them, 200 photos on them. Store them, label them, and just store it. And it becomes kind of like your negative. So I think that's a different way of thinking and approaching media cards. But I think it can be quite effective because oftentimes we're starting to lose our original digital assets. So think about that archival and long-term use of the media cards. That maybe they can be used as traditionally when you used to shoot on film, the negative would be processed. You'd have that negative, that roll, and you keep the negative somewhere, and you can go back to it and make more prints. So what if you treated these cards as negative, especially the lower cost ones like the SD cards and then the solid state drives? And I think the compact flash, to get the price point's pretty high. So it's harder to say, oh, I'm just going to use them once and never write to them again. But I think something to consider, it might be worthwhile in terms of your archival and data management, is to use the SD cards as a one-time use, have all the photos on it, and keep it as an archival original. And then same with the solid state drives. If you had a series of these, you're doing a project, you're just filming on these, you can have these. It's a great raw original. And then you do a backup, work with that backup, but then you have that raw saved and stored somewhere. And again, because there's no spinning parts, it has a very good long shelf life for an archival type of media card. So just something to think about. Not saying you have to do that, but it's a different way of thinking, and I think that can lead to some good opportunities in data management, because we could be really, if you're putting everything to cloud storage, if you're already using these media cards, why not use them to a greater level of what's possible with them. So yeah, so that's, again, if you want to take any equipment out, feel free to go to our website, tbmcs.ca, and take the proficiency test if you haven't already. Then we're able to add access for you to take the cameras. So again, that's the 2 cameras, the Canon 6D for the photo camera, the Blackmagic Design Pocket Cinema Camera 4K kit. Feel free to do those tests. And then we add you into access with your library card. You just go to the libraries and you can take stuff out. Okay, so that takes us through what we wanted to talk about today. So media cards for photography and video. As always, happy to, if you have any questions, Tom at tbmcs.ca. feel free to let me know. If you have questions about equipment, we like to, stay in touch. If there's any, questions you have, technology, or if you're looking to get some of your own media cards, we can always go over that. But this video will be available to rewatch, so feel free to have a look at it again. And thanks again for joining us. I'm Tom Sternad, the lead digital artist of the Creator Space. It's been a pleasure. Be sure to check out, we have a lot of upcoming workshops. We also have some in-person workshops starting in March, a masterclass session in digital cinematography, so feel free to sign up for that. Space is very limited, and it's directly for our library partner members. So if you're a member of the Blue Mountains Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library for that specific cinematography, or the Collingwood Public Library, please do check it out, sign up, and we hope to see you there. So have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you soon again in some more workshops. All the best. Take care.